What's going on, everybody, and welcome to the Thursday episode of the Other Side of the Firewall podcast. We call it the Ask a CISSP podcast. So on Thursdays, I like to sit down and have an interview with someone who's in the space, who's moving, shaking, things of that nature. And in this case, I've launched a product or an idea on LinkedIn, and then this is when I ran into this individual, and we had a pretty cool conversation, and it transition to, hey, let's talk about it. What he didn't know was I was going to put it on the podcast. I always forget up front, so definitely continue to check us out. We're now down to 1 hour-long episode a week, and then also the hour-long interview as those things progress. We're on 9 FM in the Atlanta metro area, as well as the TuneIn app on Tuesdays at 8 p.m., and then you can catch us on pretty much every platform of your choice any other time. But with that being said, I bring you Bryce. So Bryce is, I want to say you have 3 decades of experience, 2 decades of which come from the Air Force. So you also bleed blue. It's always good to have an Air Force veteran on the podcast. But if you can for me, I would like for you to introduce yourself, give us a little bit of your background and your experience, and then we can go on from there.
Man, A-Town. Happy to be talking to A-Town tonight. A-Town, and I'm not Austin. I'm not A-Town down, baby. I'm Bryce Englin. It is great to be here on this opportunity. And Ryan, thank you for this. Bryce Englin is my name. I go by Bryce, or as I tell folks, you can call me Bama. Why do I say that? Roll Tide, baby, roll Tide. I know you Georgia fans ain't going to be liking that too much, but that's okay. I have, as an SEC guy, I've got a lot of love for Georgia, and I really do have a lot of love for the South and for such a great city. So I am retired United States Air Force. I spent 20 years in uniform. I tell folks of that, 14, about 20 years, believe it or not, was overseas. So I've lived Turkey, which me and Ryan were talking about beforehand. I've lived in Iceland, did 2 tours in Japan, so 6.5 years.
Oh, I'm jealous.
Across 2 tours in Japan, worked at the U.S. Embassy in Cairo, Egypt for 3 years from 2004 to 2007. Also been on the continent of Africa, the U.S. Embassy in Djibouti, which is right next to Ethiopia, Eritrea.
Yeah, DJ, yeah.
Yeah. And then, interesting story, I love to talk to folks. I was actually deployed to Kuwait the day 9/11 happened.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's interesting. That would definitely be an interesting story. We should definitely pick up on that. If we don't talk about that here, we should definitely talk about that. Like you said, maybe we have another project on our hands. Yeah.
No, I agree with you. 10 years later, took off for Afghanistan 8 days after the daughter was born. So I missed, and I got a buddy of mine who, and while I was there, I was actually, believe it or not, setting up a knowledge management cell, SharePoint foundations, organizational foundations for different multi-networks, doing a lot of IT project management at the about a 450 person organization level. I have to remember, we don't want to in this space talk about organization. And, you want to give qualify or quantify manpower. So my space personally today, since retirement, is in the area of international cooperative development. So I enjoy academia pretty much is where my space is. So I've spent 4.5 years after I retired teaching folks heading down to do the job I did in Cairo and Djibouti. And I've been working in the area of project management for the last, I want to say 2 years. And it's amazing how much I've seen IT and engineering, especially when you start getting into complex weapon systems come into play. I mean, it's really interesting how IT-centric our systems are today across the U.S. Air Force. But long-term, my goal is academic with a focus on coaching and mentoring, collaborative, with a focus on meta-modernize, finding that happy medium or oscillating towards a solid foundational position in the scope of organizational and management culture. So the idea is help organizations teach leadership and management, because it is an area where a lot of folks, they might say, "Oh, I'm a leader," but really you're a manager. And the IT spaces, cybersecurity spaces are areas where we're starting to see disruption and churn. And I think this is why I wanted to come on and talk about this is, I think from an organizational standpoint, say this as a PhD student working on a PhD in organization and management with a cognitive executive coaching from Liberty, that we're going to start to see trends, especially in national security, but even in smaller companies as well too. And probably one of the things that I'm going to talk about, if there's a CEO listening, others are listening, folks, may say, well, that ain't going to make sense. I would love to have a conversation with anybody at that time about how you can make it possible, because it's not just one perfect situation, it is a multitude. You have to know what you're dealing with. And that's the thing that I think a lot of IT organizations are missing. But yeah, we can get into that, talking a little bit more about that here in the next few minutes.
No, I think that's a excellent introduction, and it pairs well with again your experience and background. When during after I should say during and after my transition, I saw a lot of what you were talking about, where it was a definite transition going from working with or being a leader with an organization, and then going into the private or public sector, where there is a lot more management than leadership, right? Because we, to a certain extent, I always tell people we not only care for our people, but sometimes you have to care, raise, and feed the people, right? Because they're brand new, they're just out of potentially out of high school or just out of their home for the first time. So there's a lot. There's a steep learning curve when it comes to leadership, and then we get to a point where I believe that we get really good or we master it, and I don't see a lot of that on the outside because you don't necessarily have to care as much for the people as you do about their specific role or duty, right? Like there's no one checking on your dental records or your shot records or things of that nature, which again can be a bit excessive, but it does give you a different frame of reference when it comes to actually caring about people and caring about their well-being and things of that nature, and just preparing them for the ultimate test of fortitude, which is, combat war
Yep.
somewhere near or close to it. But no, so I think this is gonna be a great conversation. So when it comes to the pairing of the two, what made you decide to go in this direction? Because it seems as
So,
though you're big into leadership, you're big into empowerment. What made you want to mingle the two?
so great point and great question, man. I love that, Ryan. I think you've hit on a good thing. So I remember, um, when I was in the military, believe it or not, I almost got kicked out of the country of Djibouti. And I, for
That's probably a good story.
another story, another time. And I'm kind of being a little more vulnerable and open here. And I'm a human. I make mistakes. Come back. I was wound pretty tight. I ended up getting medically retired. But while I was there, somebody mentioned, I want you to read the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. So I started noticing a trend after retirement. And as I have listened and become an audiobook junkie over the last couple of years, I've tended to notice that I've gone through the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. I've also gone through Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People. Through my PhD program, I've been studying Kotter's 8-step methodology. I had a buddy recommend Goldratt's theory of constraints. Those are 4 big influencers on me. But Covey and Carnegie are very, very vital when we start to talk about human interaction. And I had to think about it for a second. Covey is really the guy who lays the groundwork in the 7 Habits and the 8th Habit, which I'm actually doing the 8th Habit for listening to the audiobook for the second time. I've listened to the 7 Habits 5 times over the last 3 years. I've gone through Carnegie's book. But Covey talks about the difference between leading and managing. So leadership, if you think about it, is setting the vision. And Cotter even highlights that. Leadership, you're setting a vision, you're empowering folks. You want folks to get out there. Management is you're kind of just gliding the position along. And what we tend to find is as we're looking at organizations today, there's a lot of over management under leadership. And one of the things I've noticed with Gen Z, especially Gen Z, and you're seeing this, and I think this is why I think cuspers, those of us Zennials, you're born at the end of Gen X,
Right.
be like a cusper catalyst. I view it as those folks born between 77 and 85. You're an analog. I've got my leg here in an analog because I was born at the end of it, but I'm living in a digital world, so I understand both both things. So I think we in that group are going to be the best to teach that. But I'm noticing Gen Z, these guys want feedback. Our young 19, 20-year-olds want feedback. How am I doing? What am I doing? What can I do? And this is one of the reasons why I'm starting to think also IT is starting to become IT, cybersecurity, computer science. It leads me to ask the question, why do you need a college degree? Why do I have young 20-year-olds spending 4 years in a classroom learning about things that change so fast. Why not instead, and this is where it's going to get a little
Mhm.
controversial, why not, if you've graduated high school, I want to put you through, go through a boot camp, spend 3 grand, go get CompTIA, go to ISC2, go take the test, get certified, get everything you need, get agnostic, basic foundations. Let's hire these guys in, pay them 30, 35, $40 an hour. Or maybe, you know what? Maybe you pay them $25 an hour and the company says, okay, you're going to commit to me for a year. Real leadership means you're going to come in, I'm going to pair you up with somebody, and we're going to teach you the foundation of IT. So, and I understand some of the guys, well, I went to college, but this guy didn't. Why? Or this gal didn't. Why? Well, what am I going to give you? I'm going to give you a pay raise, or I'm going to give you a bonus. I'll tell you what, how about 5,000? You spend time, you teach this person, you work, you show them the ropes, you teach them, get them the experience. How about after a year, I give you 5 grand for doing that? How many folks going to jump onto that?
Right.
So this is what I think. I think what we need to move is, let's get away, let's lead, and let's bring folks in, and let's treat IT, cyber, as a trade
Yeah, I was gonna say
more
it
than,
it seems more like going to trade school,
yeah,
like being a plumber or being a HVAC technician or things that you absolutely do need. What do need IT, you do need cyber,
yeah,
but it's more of like, okay, I graduate high school or I get my GED and then I go to get my certification or go to a trade school as opposed to, like you said. And I obviously I'm biased. I like the Air Force. I'm biased in two ways, right? Like I'm biased on the education tip because it is an HR checkbox that I fulfill, and I don't knock anybody for not doing that. I know plenty of people who have made it to really high positions who are either great technicians or great leaders without the college degree. But also, it was paid for me in full, right? So I don't have that mentality where it's like, well, I had to pay my dues, so you have to pay yours too. No, like I went to the military. The military paid for all my certifications, all my education, and I got to walk in, scot free, basically.
yeah.
So it would
And
be awesome.
and let me also highlight and advocate that I'm not against college at all. I just don't think in IT, somebody in cybersecurity, IT needs college until later on.
I see. When they're trying to
Ex-
progress to like management or something.
Correct. You don't really. And matter of fact, I would even say, unless you want to be a C-suite guy, and you're just wanting to be a mid-level manager, once you've gotten a bachelor's in computer science or a bachelor's, and don't get me wrong, the bachelor's degrees teach you foundation from like IT history. What was it? The old OSI yes, there's history, there's value in understanding the concept of old programming languages. There's value in understanding, but I think the real world experience that guys gain from being out in industry working is going to translate into a more fruitful education. And it's going to also find themselves challenging and enhancing the organization as they go. So think about it. We're kind of reversing it a little bit. It's a
Right.
reverse flow. It's also adding that relational aspect to it because you're building relationship, you're building expectation. And managers who may not know the first thing about IT are providing clear left and right guideline limits as well too. I don't need, and one of the things I always have found about IT managers, a good IT manager can have an MBA or an MS in ITM or cybersecurity. But if I'm somebody who's an IT manager, I don't necessarily need to know what the latest greatest server is. I don't need to know zeros and ones. I know what a server is. I understand the concept of
Right.
infrastructure.
You have a high level visibility, and you
Yeah,
you understand who you need to put on the task.
but real leadership is me saying, okay, we got to go see the CEO. You're coming with me. You're briefing it. And I'm going to say, what do you think? That right there, that's the basic of leadership empowerment. What do you think? Where do you want to go? What do you recommend? And I'll tell you what, when you start telling folks that, the buy-in becomes amazing. It's, wow, this company, this boss actually, he's telling me this or she's telling me this. And when I think of left and right guidelines in terms of this, okay, don't do anything that's going to break laws. Don't, if somebody is validating through the DMZ and getting in the back door, yeah, you need to close it off. Don't be doing stuff that you're going to, I don't want you installing server stuff from at home. I want to make sure that you're doing stuff and setting things up that we're we're mitigating risk to the maximum extent possible. And that is one thing that I don't think a lot of folks do enough is leaders don't ask enough questions. And that's the other thing. They don't ask enough questions. Everything is so vague. And one of the things I find from Covey, and this is where leadership kind of comes back in. Fast is slow and slow is fast. Yes, we live in a very fast world. Everybody wants instant, 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 instant. This is not the way leadership works. The investment in additional time is what is going to help you make the money. The other thing I notice is managers tend to be very hoarded. They want to hoard everything. They don't want to give because they feel like if I cede control or I facilitate, it's going to take away. It's going to take away or it's going to hamper my ability to be in control. It's like, hey, you know what? Throw the trust out there. I'll tell you what, your employees are going to give you more. Odds are you're probably going to have a young employee who's got Set Plus, or maybe they've got Net Plus, maybe they've got the CISSP. They've been through the boot camp, they got the certification. Maybe they see a way to patch the system. Maybe they just need to experiment with zeros and ones, and they just need somebody with them to help them find that perfect position.
No, I think that's awesome. It kind of mirrors a lot of the characteristics, necessarily the same path, right, as the military, but a lot of the characteristics where they bring in a as young as a 17-year-old, teach them the basics of discipline and how to think like you're in the military, but then push you into a trade, whether you picked it yourself or whether it was available to you. But in this case, you would be picking your own trade, saying, okay, I want to pursue IT in this portion, or I want to pursue cybersecurity in this portion. So I think that would be a interesting idea, and I think it would work out really well. But how do you change the mindset of the HR system and of the C-suite to make that happen?
And actually, that's really a good question. I love it because me and a wonderful CEO, and here's how you can tell you got a great IT CEO. They'll listen, but you don't see that a lot. And I'm not going to give the person's name, but we're going across as a conversation across blue sky one day. Amazing guy. Matter of fact, great guy, great leader in the Black community as well too. I believe he's down there in Georgia.
Okay.
And but yeah, truly amazing guy, worked for Google. And he said one of the biggest issues he was noticing is that usually the guys who wrote all the early job descriptions just kept the same thing. So one of the places you have to start is you have to bring in, and this is where you've got to be willing to seed a little bit. Bring in the IT folks to look over your job descriptions. Yeah, and now creating an organization, it does not happen overnight. I agree with you. And you have to make sure the system's in place. And that's where I think that the questioning has to come in, where it's like, okay, what does this look like? Where are we trying to go? So as Covey talks about, begin with the end in mind. So you have to have a clear vision of where you want to go. Second, and I'm going to grab from Cotter a little bit, you have to establish a sense of urgency. IT is changing. If we're not moving with a sense of urgency. We're not moving with a sense of making things happen and
Right.
getting the thing to take root. It's not going to. The third piece, and this is where I think Carnegie kind of gets into play. You have to be relational. You treat people as people. You don't treat people as a resource. That means the dignity of the people.
Mhm.
That means the equality and the individuality. Every person has great skills. That's how my version of DEI. I'm going to dignify the person. I'm going to aim for equality, and I'm going to aim for individuality because I want to celebrate the individuality. But I will also tell you, I believe when you do those things, it gives you diversity, equity, and inclusion. And yes, I will tell you, I'm all for DEI in a company. I want to see as many people as possible because there's a lot of people with a lot of great ideas who don't ever get the opportunity out there.
Right.
So I I want to make sure that I highlight it. But that's where you start. If you're trying to make a change on the HR side, look and measure and ask that question. Can we get in by spending a year to 2 years bringing these guys in? And now this may sound a little carrot and stick, but I don't want it to sound carrot and stick. It's, hey, if you come in, you're willing to take this. Well, I'll pay you this salary, entry level. And oh, by the way, If you give me 2 years of commitment, you work with us for 2 years, we'll try to make it work, find the right mentor, line up. Because a lot of it is right folks, right fit and everything. You got to make sure that there's good synergy there.
Right.
And sometimes that does take a little bit of time, but you pay willing to reimburse them for their boot camp cost. And another thing that comes, and this is what I was going to touch on earlier in organizational culture. I think certifications are another good thing. I don't think if you're wanting to become a master, a manager, and you've got a bachelor's degree, this is where I think the benefit can come in with getting your ITIL, your Scrum Master, your PMP as well too. And I am a advocate that multiple certifications create the greatest legacy to a company. So if you've got one guy with a PMP, you've got a gal with a ITIL, you've got somebody with Agile, you got somebody with theory of constraints, maybe you got somebody over here with 7 habits, 4 or 5 different approaches. Guess
Right.
what? 4 or 5 different ways to look. You sit them down. What do you think? We can look at different things through different lenses as well too. But a master's degree, again, I think master's degree is great if you're going to be moving into the strategic management. But if you are focusing in on just, I know I want to stay project, that's where I want to go, or I want to be an
Mhm.
engineer with a project manager, or I want to move into cyber engineering, those certifications are just as good as well too. So that's kind of where I think about that. But again, as I allude to, I'd rather the company make an investment, because when you make an investment in people and you treat them like humans, and you give them feedback, you give them the right and left guidelines, you empower those that they're mentored up with to have that. Tell you what, that's good. But what the CEOs or the guys in the C-suite need to do, you got to show up unannounced and get out from behind your desk. Now, I remember I was given a presentation on this approach to young 20-year-old students on politics and emotion at the University of South Florida a few months back. And one of the things I highlighted to them is I said, let's say you're in an organization. How would you guys feel if the CEO was coming down unannounced? Most of them got scared. I said, well, what if the
Right.
CEO comes down? What if the CEO is somebody who or the CIO, CKO, the chief content officer? There's somebody who just pays attention. They come down. How you all doing? How's everything going? You know, they're just a person that's there.
Right.
You,
Approachable.
yeah. And they come down. Oh, I'm just here because I just want to see how things are going. Tell me what's going on. If the CIO or the chief cyber officer or the chief security officer or the chief ISSP officer, let's say, or the
Mhm.
ISSO. Again, I will admit I'm not well versed on behind the firewall. Again, I understand it, but those, hey, how you doing? What's going on? Oh, you're zeros and one person? How's things going? How's your programming going? Do you have everything you need? Well, what are you using? Tell me what you're doing.
I
Even
think
if I step,
leaders would be comfortable with that, but managers would not. Because
I know they want it.
now you're getting the dirty laundry, and I'm not there to filter it.
Yeah, well, I don't care what the manager thinks. If the
Right.
manager's, but here's the thing: if a manager is a solid manager, there should be no dirty laundry there. If the manager's established a good organization of trust, the dirty laundry shouldn't be there. And I think that's the funny part. But most CC guys who are approachable, their managers will know, hey, they're going to treat their managers like folks, and maybe they'll ask behind closed doors, "Hey, what happened here? Tell me what's going on. There's 3 sides. I usually say there's 3 sides to every story. Their side, your side, and the truth. Tell me what's going on. Just be open and honest with me. Maybe, maybe there is a misunderstanding. Maybe the relationship isn't as strong. So and so, they just don't mesh well. They had a blow up, and okay, why'd they have a blow up? Did they not get along? Sometimes human differences are an aspect of organizational differences. Well, okay, who do you recommend we team them up? I'm not going to get rid of the person. Let's shift them around. Let's figure out what we can do to motivate them. Maybe everybody is induced with different approaches or different things. And that's where again, do you need additional certifications? Maybe we're throwing somebody in and having them work in SQL and Python, and they don't have a Microsoft certification. I'm using that kind of as a loose example.
Right.
Maybe maybe they need a step back. They're so task saturated with something going on at home. Family's struggling. Maybe maybe they need a mental health day. And I know that that's kind of become the new Gen Z. I am not against mental health days. I think and it's something that organizations have to kind of understand as Gen Z starts to hit their 20s and millennials. I think millennials are still trying to wrap millennial leaders who are emerging and
Mhm.
think of these as the guys who are 10 years younger than us. You know, Gen Xers are like, mental health day. What's that? Why is there
Right.
a mental health day? I think there's ways to mitigate that, but also creating a workplace environment that's fun. If you got folks, matter of fact, maybe you got a bunch of gamers who work 14 hours straight and they just want to code and program. Because I've noticed in the 30 years, there's two types of folks. There's those who want to lead, and there's zeros and one guys.
Right.
They're the guys and girls who you just want to put behind a terminal and just let them program. Just let them code because that's what they love. That's what they want to do. And those are the folks. They're like, I don't want to go before the C-suite. Just you know what? Give me money, but you go brief. Okay. I'll tell you what. You tell me what to brief. You tell me what you're doing. I'll make it look all pretty. All I'm going to ask for you to do is I want you to watch and listen to the video feed of what we're doing so you can see what's getting briefed to the C-suites and you can see that guy and gal so-and-so did this. And I just want to let you know they did an amazing job. And, because I think that's the other thing. People want to be recognized. There's recognition goes a long way. And that's another aspect of treating people like people.
Right. And that was kind of my style when I was, because right now I don't supervise anybody. So it's a great vacation. I'm enjoying it. I've been out for 2.5 years now. And I don't get me wrong, I did enjoy it when I was in though, but that was kind of my thing. Like praise the public, hashed out in private, but I always try to find a person's currency. Like you said, some people do like the recognition. Some people are chasing higher levels of responsibility, but some people just want to just do the job. And then their carrot may be, more time off, or maybe you can buy a product. You can convince the leadership to buy a product that either aids them in their education or makes them more effective at doing their job. So I definitely agree, and I think that would be I kind of see that from like so I've worked in 3 different jobs, so I have seen it, but usually the carrot is the bonus or the package of some sort. So it usually does come down to monetary, but I have seen other companies that do incentivize like time off. Like, okay, let's get you some time with your family and things of that nature. So it is that ebb and flow. So I think you're definitely onto something. So to go back on something you said, which I think would be beneficial to us all. I don't know, like it has to happen one day where you said that you can actually have the IT folks look over the recs. I think that should be across the board. When you look at a job rec, when you're applying for a job, they want a unicorn. They want you to know how to code. They want you to know how to, how to program this. They want you to have these 18 certs. And then when you find out what the job really is, it's a fraction of that. And you're like, wait, like
Yeah.
I'm very over prepared for this position.
Over prepared and that's and unfortunately that's where I think IT's really caught DOD. You got a lot of guys we're bringing in on contractor positions. They're so qualified, but they don't end up doing the job because nobody has set and a lot of that really is the way organizations are reading the contracts. And folks might say, well, how do you know this? You're not an expert. Trust me, I've been retired almost 10 years. I would say 7 of that is working as a DoD contractor. So trust me, I've spent enough time with IT. I've seen it in 30 years working across doing touch level maintenance, computer, and living through that. I've seen it. It's not hard to observe. Most folks will disagree. And if they want to say, well, you don't know it, you're not, it's like, trust me, I've seen it. And again, people can call me. Anybody wants to call and this is open challenge. Anybody wants to call me and come into this space or come into any space and have a moderated, respectful dialogue on it. I would have that dialogue all the way through. And I say that because I got an article published that you can find in the Great Power Competition, Volume 4, on cybersecurity cooperation. How do you do cyber with international partners? How do you collaborate
Mhm.
on cyber? How do you collaborate, especially in cyber diplomacy, when China is buying up, as an example, they're buying up infrastructure in Africa, or
Right.
I'll take it another one. When your modems in every country are Huawei, which has, I think, is still under uh is still banned to this day in the United States. Or so those are things that I don't think a lot of folks fully comprehend and understand. Oh, it's like, oh, I'll just get a modem. Well, do you understand the laws? I mean, look, one of the things I studied as I was writing this 31 page, and this is based off the Cyber Solarian Commission, which was a bipartisan commission done by Congress. I want to say in 2019. It was done by the House and Senate, and they realized, and there was a relational aspect into it. I mean, it was a pretty in-depth and thorough report. It was also one that emphasized the public-private partnership. And cyber is cyber IT, computers, computer security. And let me also highlight one more thing. I want folks to understand that when I think of cyber, I think of security, I think of information technology, I think of cyber as this encompassing domain, institution. It's kind of its own unique world,
Right.
which is another thing that most people have a hard time wrapping their head around. And matter of fact, in my article, I even highlight it. Cyber, as retired Israeli General Dan Efroni highlights, cyber is a changing environment. He has this amazing thing. It is whatever you want it to be. It can be one thing 1 minute, while the next thing another minute. And where do I grab that from? I tell folks to go watch the 1982 Disney movie Tron. Tron is an
That's a good
example of
callback.
what we talk to when we think of cyber. Go watch Wreck-It Ralph 2 and see. I mean, most folks don't. You wonder, how do I envision cyber? And there is still debates raging between cyber being an environment. Well, what about cyber that enters into the air domain or land domain? That's cyber part of the land domain. That's cyber that's part of the sea
Mhm.
or the space domain. To me, cyber is this pure man-made environment. That's where I come to. And again, as I want to make sure that I emphasize to cybersecurity guys, trust me, your role in cybersecurity is just as important as the guys who are doing programming and IT, or
Oh, yeah,
risk
absolutely.
management,
Yeah.
compliance. And I think that's a one thing a lot of folks miss as well too is nobody ever gives cybersecurity or information assurance the love they need, especially when they're protecting networks. Also,
Right. It's always bolted on or it's an afterthought. And
yeah,
so, like, we talk about this all the time on the podcast. And the Department of Defense no longer, right? Like they're always thinking. Well, I should say we are always trying to think cyber forward. We're always like, okay, how do we mitigate risk? How do we do X, Y, and Z? Then when you come out to the civilian sectors, the Wild Wild West, only because budgets, right? Like, so we always talk about how the bottom line for the military is, can you war? Can you deter
yeah,
war? Can you go to war? And that's when we care about dollars and cents. But private sector, it's no, it's like, hey, my bottom line is this. I have shareholders. I have this. I have that. And then there's that balancing act. And of course, as a cyber professional, right, we always want to say it's cheaper to bake me in earlier in the process than to pay the fine or the regulatory fees because you could be out of business in 6 months with one cyber breach, and
yep.
people just don't think that
Well,
way.
and what was it? One of the perfect example, Colonial, the oil pipeline
Yeah, yeah,
that was it's like nobody thinks about infrastructure. Matter of fact, critical infrastructure. It's amazing. I think it was gosh, the book. I always tell first ebook I ever read was gosh, where I one of the concepts that I think about is mutually assured cyber destruction
mm,
associated with critical infrastructure. People would say, well, and you talk to a regular lead, they're going to say, oh, mutually assured cyber destruction. That's just taking mutually assured destruction and nuclear weapons. Well, I'll tell you right now, it's not hard for somebody as a script key to get a hold of cyber code and use AI to create a cyber dirty bomb. They don't know what they're doing. They just detonate it off. And all of a sudden we've got Stuxnet level chaos rolling because they magically exploited a gap. It's almost kind of like, and this is where I was going to allude to earlier. One of the problems that most partners out there don't realize in terms of Africa is when you sign deals with China, your um the stuff you're doing gets stored on in the PRC server
right.
area. And I don't think a lot of folks realize that. And we have on the US side, I've noticed we are trying to work with the PRC to strengthen intellectual or intellectual capability or information protection. Because I will tell you, there is an element of the PRC, and I say this from a nonpartisan standpoint, that they do want to do business. They love doing business with the West. Different way of thinking, but it's all about making money. That's really what it comes down to for folks is how much money can I make? How can I make money? Now, again, we can have debates on different ideas, communism, Marxism. Those are political theories.
Right. The
And history
production
has
that works.
shown up, yeah, and history has shown us that the ideas are great, but they never work in pure thought as everybody would think they do. So again, I'm not trying to highlight that or say anything negative. Now, to scale back to one thing, if folks are wondering, how can I change the organizational culture, or how can I maybe get people to buy in, or how do I get that younger, lower level individual set up for success? This is where I think external management training can come in. So for instance, bring in the Dale Carnegie course. Pay $2,100 to send somebody through the Dale Carnegie course. That's what it costs. You can do it online, or bring Dale Carnegie course in over an 8 week period or a 3 day period to teach that relational aspect. And real quick, I share that because today I was on the phone with my stock with the guy who's setting up my stocks. We were on there for 2 hours today. He invested 2 hours of time in me, but we were talking and building a relationship. And I said, "Are you a Seven Habits guy?" He's like, "Nope. My dad told me to take the Dale Carnegie course." And that's where I
Gotcha.
knew the connection was. But the Seven Habits, those leadership and management courses can really help folks to do it. Most folks want to go new buzzwordy. But again, as I say, you want to go slow being fast and fast being slow in this area. The more time you move, you lay out expectations, you empower, it's easy to teach folks. And that's why I think it's so much better to bring somebody in with certifications into an organization, because it's going to create that career. It's going to also leverage a sense of individuals who are going to be happier, healthier. And as we talk, it's going to be the carrot or the incentive that's going to want folks to do things. I want to also highlight, I know we talk carrot and stick. Carrot and stick sometimes gets negative connotations from a command and control. Carrot and stick can be a good thing. It's just important to understand that you don't want to use a stick. You want carrot's fine. Not everybody responds to the same carrot. Not everybody responds to the same stick. If you throw carrots out there, that's great. You just want to make sure you throw carrots out in the term. And carrot could be empowerment. Carrot could be a form of work. And the other thing I also tell folks is if you're going to go down this road, focus on a win-win agreement. And what that means is set up clear, defined goals. If the team, and set them up from the team perspective. If your goal is to mentor and we're going to grow, we want to grow by such and such, whatever the
Right.
analytics say we or the marketplace is looking for us to grow by, set that up. And I'll tell you what, maybe you set up a bonus based on that. That right there is what people do, but you have to do it in a collaborative manner. You have collaborative, empower, and get out of the way and just let folks go.
Yeah, I think that's the hardest part is the trust factor because everybody's concerned about career and how do I look and those optics and things of that nature. There's not as much room to fail out in the civilian world. When we were in the military, you had room to grow, right? You can go from being a teenager and not really understanding to being like, a master of controlling people's time and space where they can flourish and do well. And I think like when you say to bring in the Carnegie course, I think that's absolutely a great idea. Because we had that when I was stationed here at McDill, JCSC. We brought the course in a couple of times to teach different things to do with leadership and team dynamics and things of that nature. And it was great. It was you always learn something new. We did the seven. I'm sorry, we did the four lenses. We did fun stuff like that where you got to learn about people and you got to learn a little bit deeper understanding of what drove them, what made them tick. And I think that would be great to see that brought to more organizations.
And real quick, one more thing I do want to tag on, and this is something if folks wonder, well, what do you do with the guys who are going to manipulate the systems or folks who are going to they're gonna be unethical. Trust me, natural law eventually does catch up with those folks because if you empower folks, and you've done your due diligence, those individuals are going to turn around and they're going to be willing to look when irregularities pop up. It's kind of almost like the bug bounty. I think, what is it? The bug bounty system we have with programmers, networks, and stuff like
Right.
that. I think we've seen bug bounties even in the crypto market as well, too.
I was muted that entire
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
So I was gonna say, yes, we have seen that, and it's always, a value add to say, "Hey, come break my stuff in a controlled manner, so that way we can fix it, so there's not chaos later downstream when someone who was, in it for nefarious reasons or to make money does it. I'd rather pay you a small purse than have to pay a big fine on the back end."
And that right there is the ethical when we start talking about certified ethical hackers. I mean, those are other certifications we could pay, that companies could pay as teaching folks early on. You've got Sec Plus, you've got a MCSE, or you've got Microsoft specialist. Why not you spend 6 months getting experience? You're like, man, my jam is I want to go break stuff. Okay, let's go. We'll set up a temp environment.
Mhm.
The program manager
Yeah,
is getting
like a
ready to run
sandbox.
sandbox running. The project manager is running sprints and cycles. You've got everything identified. You've got 3 guys certified. You paid for certified ethical hacker. Got an exploit bugs. And oh, by the way, pay $100 for every bug you find and that you fix. And move on. I'll tell you what, guys will eat that stuff alive. And in addition to it, especially if you start looking at the value savings once you do that, or you get bugs from the external agencies as well too. I mean, human resources systems could legitimately sit there and find, I'll give you a free month of service. Love a service so much. You found a bug. Well, let's give you a free month of service. Let's give you a free year of service. I'll tell you what, that's inducement right there.
Right, no, absolutely. So, I always like to pivot, just before we end, 'cause I like to capture what people are doing outside of, their career, outside of their work, right? What they're doing for themselves. So, we know you're big into football, right? So I know, you would have a great conversation with Chris and with, Shannon. I'm from Western New York. We don't have a lot of I'm not gonna say I'm not bashing us. The closest good team I have is Syracuse, right? When it comes to college football. I say all that to say, what do you do to unwind? Like, what is your happy place?
Cool.
Okay.
My daughter and my family. My daughter plays club volleyball, so I enjoy
Oh,
going to
awesome.
watch her volleyball games. I enjoy work, and I enjoy listening to audiobooks and reading and walking my dog.
What
So
kind of dog do you have?
I got a little miniature schnauzer, and me and him walk around here in Ohio. So I'm out in Ohio, just so everybody is aware. And I was in Alabama, and I spent 6 years. I retired out of Gunter near Montgomery. The reason I left was I made more money. I was offered a better job, making more money up here, and that's where I found my love of academia. And that's where I'm getting ready to head back to. Now, I'm in the middle of a career transition back to academia,
Because
but
my
that's
my
where I'm
son
gonna.
just walks right by.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, that's cool. Um, yeah, but I really think there's going to be a solid opportunity in academia. I got to ask, is your son working on schoolwork right now?
So he loves to code. So he's big into right now Roblox, and I think it's Lulu is the language. But he's built games in pretty much everything I can think of, to include now he's playing around with Blender and he's making his own 3D models. Like that's his jam. He's really big into coding, and scripting. So right now he's working on a project with his friends. He's built a team. He assembled a team of 5th graders where they all have their own tasks, right? He does the they call them obbies, right? Like the building of platformers. And then he has another friend who is on the team who is doing all of the artwork, and he has another friend who's doing some other special scripting. Like to hear their conversations is funny because they talk to each other not just as friends, but kind of as coworkers. It's like none of you guys getting paid.
And they're having fun doing it. They're
They are
enjoying
having
the
fun.
value of it. I was going to say one of the things, and I think there's value in this for engineers and even team. Not necessarily coding, but the use of Minecraft to
Yeah.
design projects, buildings, and other things. I think Minecraft is another opportunity for STEM career
Yeah.
path as
That
well
that was
too.
that was the gateway. So that like they say the gateway drug, that was the gateway that got him into it was Minecraft. And now he's in Roblox land for as long as that lasts, because they're having some issues. But that's a whole different conversation. Like
Yeah.
Chris Hansen's getting involved. Like when Chris Hansen shows up, it's time to shut down.
Who's Chris Hansen?
That's the guy who catches you on NBC doing child predator stuff.
Oh, yeah, yeah, okay, okay,
Yeah,
okay.
like, "Hey, so you're here to see, so and so," and the guy would, like, try to run out the room, and the
Gotcha.
FBI tackles him. That's Chris
Yeah.
Hansen.
No, okay, now I'm following. Yeah, no, I completely understand, and that is a sense of matter of fact, I know different discussion, but that's an area of concern even I see today as a parent, and,
But yeah,
you know,
I'm deep
we
into what he's doing. I log in. I ask him to show me the work. Who are you talking to? Like, are these kids really kids? Um,
yeah,
it's pretty crazy compared to our childhood, right? Like, we just had to worry
yeah.
about the white van pulling up and offer you candy. Like, these kids have a whole different, struggle in their hands.
Yeah. Well, and they've got the struggle with cyberbullying, and those are discussions we could even have multiple topics. I'm certain the age, some of the folks listening in Atlanta, the families would be like, or listening out on the podcast would be like, well, how do you handle that from an IT perspective, or how do you handle that from an interpersonal perspective? It's very tricky sometimes, especially too. And I'll even share with you. We had that one of the very surprising the concerns that I have today. And my wife sent me a text earlier. She's like, the shooting in Minnesota,
Right.
the Catholic school, not even passing judgment, but it looks like there's a lot of concerns that are arising from that. And the reality is that was I think we're gonna see that was a misguided youth who was struggling with a lot of mental health. And and the influence of the online environment, if we were to look from a psychological standpoint, I'm almost willing to bet that the individual has probably got a web history going back 5 or 6 years, and they were dabbling in spaces in
Right.
forums of concerns. This is why I highlight to moms and dads even out there, make sure you're aware of what your kids are doing. And it is possible to be a loving parent and say, you have to qualify to them, not just because I said so, but tell them why. Tell them the world's a dangerous, dangerous place. If you're coding with friends and projects, make sure you're meeting your friends. I'll tell you what, that will go a long way. Your friend, and if you treat your kids' friends like really cool, oh hey, nice to meet you, and you treat them with respect, they're gonna be like, my parents are pretty cool. And your parents are pretty cool. They're not strict authoritarians like you say they are. They're actually treating me good. And that's how we start to build the trust as well, too. Again, different discussions we could have on different parenting. There's different approaches. But when you take an active interest in your kids, it's amazing what starts to cultivate out in the long term as well. So yeah, I think we're about time. I don't want to get you cut off.
No, you're good. But yeah, no, it's a great conversation. I can't wait to read more of your work, and I know that you're in the midst of your academic journey, right?
Correct.
Hopefully, we'll have you back on before you get the doctor title, right? Get you on here a
Yeah.
few times. No, go ahead.
All I was gonna say is, no, if there is, with the greater group of folks, I would love to come in and spend some time with you guys having a longer term, duration talking. And I was looking through them, so, your co-hosts, they all have a very well-versed background. I think one guy, I mean, all prior military, great IT experience, and all amazing certifications, whether from ISC2. I saw one of your co-hosts, he has MCSE. I think you have CISSPs. You've got well varied group, and there's so much to that you could spend time doing. So to me, this is about just having that organizational and management discussion within the IT or the cybersecurity sphere, because that is such a area that you can find. And metamodernism is a topic that I would love to talk about. It's where I think my dissertation's going. And there is a way to have that discussion, highlight what it means to oscillate towards a solution. But again, we would probably need an hour for that discussion alone,
Gotcha.
based on what it is and how you apply it into the IT and cyber arenas.
No, absolutely. That may be the next one that we have, or that get you on the show with the rest of the crew. But this was a great conversation. I really appreciate you, hitting me up on LinkedIn, where I get a lot of people asking to be on the podcast, and then spending the time and sharing your knowledge. So definitely continue to check out the podcast. So this is the Thursday episode of The Other Side of the Firewall. You check us out every week. We have a new episode every week. We're also on WDJY 99.1 FM out of Atlanta metro area and your podcast platform of choice. And where can they find you, Bryce?
So I am can be found on LinkedIn under my name, Bryce, Bryce England. My social media, I am on Facebook. I do not use X, I use Blue Sky. And you can find me out there at Bryce Englin on Blue Sky. I most of my LinkedIn stuff is gonna be a lot of business leadership things. I tend to post things that are meant to get folks thinking. I have posted about IT stuff, but just generally stuff that comes to mind. I am working on a project of coaching and mentoring long term where I'd like to get into the sphere of working with, and I actually have some great minority folks I'm working with to expand and help them get into the military contract sphere. And there's some opportunities there. And I love the idea of mentoring and coaching our young entrepreneurs who just need that extra glean. And when I think of the minority community, I think of communities who they've got all this great knowledge, they've got all this great background. What they just need sometimes is they need an opportunity. They need somebody to listen to them. They need
Absolutely.
somebody to ask a question. Hey, how do I do this? I'm like, I don't know the full scale of this, but I've been around the US government enough that I can probably connect you. Or I can tell you what it looks like to go after the DOD contract, or how do I delve into being leader or a manager? What's the difference between leading and management? And if folks want to reach out to me at that, they can go to Bryce at ticketto1000.com. Make sure you're using the number 1000 in there. And I will do my best to respond back and answer questions. I'm always open to do easy things. I don't mind spending an hour with people and doing things, because the way I look at it is money's gonna find its way eventually. When folks start making money, I'm gonna make money. And if I do things right by paying it forward the first end out, that's how it will come back to me. I don't need to be getting rich. And that's not the way we want to operate in this world. The greatest dignity we can do is by helping people get that opportunity.
That's awesome and well said. So thank you again for your time, Bryce, and for everybody listening. Stay safe, stay secure.
All right. Thanks.